What's going on, guys? It's the RPO podcast. We are back live here with you guys, and we are super excited because we are 2 weeks away from the NFL draft. We're going to talk about a little cornerbacks today and some DB plays, my favorite position. But you already know who I am. I'm Jerome Jones. You don't have to ask me who I am. But we're going to talk about my other guys right here. We're going to talk about my guy right here, Ben Swartz. How you doing today, Ben?
The drafts. It's really getting to that, like you said, 2 weeks from the draft, really getting to that time where the excitement's building. I know you love corners. I love them too, so I'm ready to talk about them.
Yes. And we got my man, the cornerback hater, but he is my guy, the man, the myth, the legend, Ray Roberts. How you doing, Ray?
I'm good, Jerome. How are you guys?
Doing well. I'm super excited. You're 2 weeks away. Like I said, you're talking cornerbacks. It's my favorite position. I'm salivating right now. I don't know if y'all see it's just coming out of my mouth. I'm just salivating right now because we are so close. But we're gonna get right into it, guys. I don't want to hold y'all up too much. We're gonna get right into the top 5 cornerback list. I'm gonna start with my man Ben right here. You're gonna start us off. Who is your top 5 cornerbacks in this 2021 draft?
All right, top 5 corners. And this is a deep class, so the end of this list was definitely pretty tough. But coming in number 1, we got Patrick Surtain out of Alabama. He's the kind of guy out of this class who I think has the potential to become, an island kind of guy. I think in a few years we might be calling it Surtain Island, Patrick Island, whatever you may think. But he's a lockdown, press man, cornerback kind of guy with elite size, elite length, and elite talent to match up with any kind of receiver in the NFL. He has, elite physical and athletic traits and has a really rare combination of length and short area quickness that is going to allow him to stay with any kind of receiver in all parts of the field. Some crazy stat that I saw was he was only beaten in true man-to-man battles for 29 plus yards at Alabama just 5 times throughout his entire college career. So like I said, Surtain's the kind of guy that I think in a few years we're going to start calling it Surtain Island, whatever you may think. Number 2, we got J.C. Horn out of South Carolina. Just first word I think of is just athletic, physical, and just dominator, right? He's about 6'1", coming in around 205 pounds. And like Surtain, he's got that crazy kind of tantalizing combination of size and length that's going to really help him out in tight man coverage. He's got really good eye discipline as well, which helps him out when he's playing those zone coverage schemes. And I could definitely see him becoming a starter year 1 and really helping out a team's secondary. Coming in number 3, I got Caleb Farley out of Virginia Tech. I know he's been dealing with some back issues, and we've been hearing a lot about how teams are really concerned about that. But if this guy doesn't have any of these injury issues, I could see him potentially coming off the board in the top 15, maybe even in the top 10. He comes in at 6'2", around 205 to 210 pounds. So he's another one of these massive corners that we haven't really seen in a little while. And he's really athletic as well. He does still need to improve a little bit on his technique and his discipline, but he's a guy who's going to be really good in those press schemes, and he can cover in zones as well. Coming in number 4, we got Greg Newsome out of Northwestern. He's a long guy with disruptive size and strength. I think in this class, he might be the best purely zone cover guy in this class if we're talking about zone skills, but he's got abilities in press coverage as well. It's really hard, I'd say, to get a good gauge on his overall long-term speed, just because a lot of throws he saw in college were on underneath routes, but his ball tracking abilities and his position are really top-notch as well. He's got great footwork, and he's got a lot of corner skills and ball hawking skills to really be successful at the next level. And then coming in at number 5, this spot was all around for me coming into this week, but I've got Asante Samuel Jr. out of Florida State. Samuel doesn't really have the size or length that a lot of people look at for an outside corner. He's only about 5'10", 180, 185 pounds, but he's got pretty much everything else. He's an incredibly gifted mover in terms of moving his hips, his footwork. He's got great speed, burst, and agility, and I think he's really good at tackling as well. He's a willing tackler in the run game. He's able to make those open field tackles. So despite not having the biggest size in the draft, he's got a lot of the other corner skills that a lot of other teams are going to be looking for.
Definitely. And before we get into, what I think about your picks real quick, we got our commenters in the comment section. So thank everybody that's in the comment section. We got Remy right here saying Jerome looked like he got hit by a quarantine, but Ray looks good. Listen, you called me on the day right before I got my haircut and everything like that. So Hey man, I get busy sometimes, so I do appreciate you being here. I know, and yes, I know you're kidding, Remy, but it's great to see you too. It's been a long time coming, man. Been missing you, didn't know where you was at. So, welcome back, Remy. Thanks for being in here. Chris Thomas says J.C. Horn to Philadelphia. I would love to see that. Hopefully, that happens. But we'll talk about that in a little bit, though. But before we get to Ben's list, I want to hear what Ray has to say about his list first.
About Ben's or mine?
Your list. We
Okay.
know about your list.
Okay. Well, you want me to just give you my top 5 then, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, it's very similar to Ben's, actually. Very, very similar, actually. I have Patrick Surtain, number 1. I think, again, long, athletic, second generation. He has everything going for him. He's probably been coached since he was very small, I'm assuming. And he's long and athletic, and he has very good speed. So I think he's number 1. Even though I have J.C. Horn also number 2. I am very close on these two guys. So I think both of them are really good football players, both second generation. And I have a little bit – I heard somebody say the other day that Tavarius Robinson, who's the defensive back, cornerback coach at University of Miami, apparently Dan, his name is escaping me, the coach for the Cowboys, Dan Quinn, is the defensive coordinator. Apparently, he really wants J.C. Horn. So we'll see what happens there. But apparently, that would be his guy if they're going to take a cornerback first.
Ray got the inside scoop.
Yeah, I actually heard this on a podcast earlier today, so I'm kind of like taking it from somebody else. I'm not going to lie about it, but it kind of makes sense. Dan Quinn has association with a lot of different coaches. Apparently, Tavarius Jackson, again, is one of them, or Robinson is one of them guys that really likes J.C. Horn. He used to coach at South Carolina, but now he's with Miami. So, number 3 is, again, like Ben says, at Caleb Fairley. I'm a little concerned about the back issue, too. But if there wasn't a back issue, he probably would be like right in between these other two guys with who was going to be the first corner off the board. So, number 4, I had Greg Newsome from Northwestern. Again, long, athletic, fast, checks all the boxes. Very good football player. And I'm going to give you a 5A and a 5B, Jerome. I know you love this. So, I have 5A. I have Asante Samuel. Again, like Ben said, very, very fast. Good athlete, not as big or as long as these other guys, but if you put him in a zone defense, he may be as good as any of these guys playing. Again, another second-generation guy. His father was that guy. He liked to play a little zone. He would play off the guys and break very well on the ball. And my number 5B is Ifanu Melifonwu from Syracuse. Again, the only reason I have them two 5A, 5B, I think if you want a press man, you go with Lafanu. If you want a zone, you go with Surtain. But they're going to be probably drafted right around the same. Both and all 6 of these guys are really good football players. So
definitely. So like you said, y'all lists are very similar. I do have a question for both of you. So both of you have the consensus that Patrick Surtain is the number 1 corner. After I was watching some tape on him, I seen that he's a little too grabby at times, especially in man coverage. Is that a big concern with either of you?
Yeah, because in the NFL they call ticky-tack penalties, but it's not that he doesn't have the speed and the recovery. He's not quite as fluid as J.C. Horn, though. That is why if you told me Dallas was going to take, Horn first and then maybe someone else would take Surtain a couple picks later, maybe the Eagles, I wouldn't be surprised. But I always worry about guys that want to get a little bit too grabby. Part of the problem, I think, at Alabama was their pass rush was not great this year. So that probably left them out there a little bit longer than they would have liked to.
Okay. Ben, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm pretty much on the same page as Ray here. I think Surtain, with him and the grabbiness, I think it's something that could definitely be worked on with coaching in the NFL. Just giving him a little bit more technique maybe with his footwork so he doesn't have to rely so much on his hands. But an interesting point is that I actually put, like Ray was saying earlier, Surtain and Horn for me are 1-2, 2-1, real close. But the reason I have Horn below Surtain is because he can actually, I think, get a little too physical downfield. And, like you were saying, Ray, that might be a problem for Surtain, but I think Horn, especially in the NFL, he's going to have to rely a little bit less on his physicality because he's going to be starting to draw those defensive pass interference penalties, whatever it may be. So I think with Surtain, it's definitely something just because of his mind, because of his athleticism, it's not going to be a huge problem in the NFL. But maybe with J.C. Horn, it might take a little bit more time to become a little more polished and stop relying on that physicality so much.
Okay. And my next question. So obviously we got Patrick Surtain, we got J.C. Horn, we got Asante Samuel Jr. Obviously the junior speaks out right there. All three of them have that bloodline. Do you think we're looking too much into these guys because of their bloodlines? Like obviously, Surtain, dad played in Miami. J.C. Horn, dad played with the Saints, and Asante Samuel, father played with the Eagles and the Patriots. Do y'all think that, with those big names with their fathers, do you think that we're looking at them a little bit more, like giving them a little bit more edge than anybody else, or you think that we're properly rating these guys?
You want to go first, Ben?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, sure. I don't know if it's necessarily that we're looking at them too much, but I think it does give them a boost because, and I see it a lot, especially with Asante Samuel Jr., he has those kind of instincts that maybe some of these other corners don't have, and that could be because of maybe something he's learned from his father, or Surtain having been coached by his father his entire life. So whether or not maybe I don't really think we're looking at them too much, but I think it does give them a little bit of a boost because of that extra intelligence, those extra instincts that are going to, those intangible things of working in and out of the game that maybe they've learned a little bit from their fathers.
What do you think, Ray?
I think that, of course, I think that probably that helped them get recruited much easier from different colleges. But if you look at these kids, all three of them play with good instincts. I think part of that is just from being coached, like I said, very young. I remember J.C. Horn, his dad played wide receiver. So he probably got a lot of intel from him about, if the receiver does this, do that. And what I like about them two guys also, not as much about as Surtain, is they have long arms, man. They both have 32 and a half, 33-inch arms, where Asante Samuel doesn't have the long arms. But again, they're different players too. Samuel is not as physical as Surtain or Horn, but his father wasn't really physical. He was like that guy that would lay off you a little bit and then wait for you to throw the ball, then break really quickly on it.
The guy would not try to tackle.
No.
Tackle.
No.
We didn't know something alive. We both
Surtain was, Samuel was that guy that would lay off you a little bit and give you a yard or two and then just wait for you to think that he's not there. But again, a really good football player. So,
more of a baiter.
Exactly. He would bait you into trying to throw the ball his way and then jump on it. Really, Asante Samuel was really good at cutting in front of wide receivers, running the pattern before they did, to be honest with
you. Yeah, you've seen it a lot. He got a lot of interceptions doing it. He would bait you, and sometimes that would hurt him, but most of the time it didn't. And he'll get it right most of the time, 90% of the time, and he'll get those picks. So
what it made him was susceptible to double move sometimes, where he would jump on a ball, then the guy would make curl around him and get outside of him, and then he would be in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens with that. I think that all these corners are incredible. We all know these top 5 guys, and they're all most likely going to be in the first round or very high second round picks. But we want to know more. We want the intel from you guys. So we want to talk about some sleepers, some guys that people are not really talking about, that haven't seen their tape or don't know much about them. We want to know about this list. So, Ray, I'm going to start you off with this one. Who is your top 5 sleepers in this 2021 draft?
Okay, well, my number 1 is Kelvin Joseph from Kentucky. He's a really good football player. Like Ben had said before, this is a really deep cornerback class. You have these guys that are going to be in the first 2 rounds. And then after that, you're going to have a lot of depth depending on what you want your corners to do. If you want them to be press man, if you want them to be zone guys. I really like Kelvin Joseph. There's a lot of talk about him maybe sneaking into early second round. If not, maybe late first. It depends again. what happens like with every position is if you see a couple of these guys go a little earlier than expected, someone will sneak into the bottom of that first round, if not definitely early second round. But I like Kelvin Joseph, and he's a 6 foot, 100, 200-pound guy, good football player. My number 2 guy is Eric Sos from Georgia. Again, a 6 foot, 195. He is the one guy who I think if you put him in zone coverage, he's going to be really good for you. And if you try to make him play press, he's not going to be as good. But again, we're talking about guys that were not as highly rated. And of course, Georgia is not. I don't like using guys from bigger schools as sleepers, but he is a guy who could be a second or third round pick or who could be a starter for you. To me, that's kind of like a sleeper. Okay. Third guy is Aaron Robinson from Central Florida. Again, really good football player. 5'11", 190. Again, more of a zone coverage type guy, but a good football player. Number 4 is Elijah Molden from Washington. Definitely a zone guy, only 5'9", 190 pounds, but a guy like in Jerome always kind of busts my stones about not liking corners. No, I just don't like paying one of them too much money because I know I need 4 good ones on my roster and I can't afford to pay all of them. So I like him also. And I like Paulson Adebo from Stanford. I really like Adebo. Again, this is a good, really good draft for corners. So Jerome should be happy this year.
Yeah, I want to. Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely happy this year. I'm happy every year with corners. I love watching. I'm sad that we didn't get the combine because that was my favorite part of the combine. Was watching the cornerbacks the last day of the combine and watching them go through their drills and watching them move their hips and watching how fluid and loose they are. So that was always my favorite thing in the combine. Obviously this year we didn't get to see that with the world pandemic right now, but I wanted to touch on the last player you just talked about, Paulson Adebo. Last year, could have came out last year, and he would have been like a first-round pick. And he's one of those guys that are definitely a sleeper because we all thought, man, this kid is going to be a first-round pick last year. Now, obviously, this year, one, I think it's a deeper draft. 2, with COVID and everything kind of hinder him. But Ben, when you think about Adebo?
Yeah, Adebo's actually on my sleeper list, so I'll talk a little bit more him. I'll talk about him now too, but I think he's the kind of guy that if you're drafting him, you might have to deal with some of the ups and downs that you saw during 2019, and him not playing this past year might have hurt him a little bit after that previous season. But with Adebo, I think he's really more of a playmaker than a lockdown corner. He's got great size, great ball skills, and the thing with him though is that he just lacks that fluidity, like we talked about with J.C. Horn earlier. He's going to have he's going to have trouble with helping off those sharp route breaks, some double moves. He might get burnt a little bit, but if he's able to get coached on those things and if he's able to play to his strengths, I think he could be really good. It's just he might be inconsistent to start his career, and he might be one of those guys where if he fails early, it might be tough to bring him back to some of his good heights.
Definitely. Well, we already spoiled your list a little bit now, so jump right into it.
Absolutely, yeah. So Ray and I, it's weird. Ray and I usually don't have very similar lists, but we seem to be pretty on point today. He's got a few of the guys that I got too. So first guy I got is Aaron Robinson, and I know when Ray said him, he pointed to me, and that's because in our last mock draft on RPO, I picked him in the first round. I think he's the kind of guy that could sneak into the first round because he has great size, decent speed, but he's really, really athletic. He's got really good transition ability, whether it be moving between routes, moving his hips, and he has good foot agility too. He's going to be the kind of guy that's going to be able to catch up and be able to stay with some receivers. He does have some patience issues in terms of waiting for routes to develop and being able to jump in front of them. But he's also a really willing tackler. He's going to help you in the run game. And the big thing I think for a team that's going to draft him is that they're going to have to decide whether or not he has the speed to play on the outside or if he's going to be better inside or in nickel duties. But I think he's a guy with a lot of potential. Next guy I have, like Ray said, Kelvin Joseph out of Kentucky. He's a guy that I've seen rise up draft boards recently into day 2, and he has a lot of the length and strength to really bully some receivers and reroute them and get them off of their lines. He's one of these guys I like to say twitchy. He's a twitchy guy. He plays with a lot of aggression. He's got a really high motor, and he has the size and ball skills to really disrupt some contested catches and get into passing lanes. Next guy I have is Shakur Brown out of Michigan State. He's really athletic and really instinctive. And he's got that inside-outside cornerback skill and experience, so he's going to be really versatile for a team that picks him. He's only got average size, about 5'11", 190, I believe. And his speed makes him maybe, with his speed, the slot might be a little bit more of a home, just because he's going to have tough time. He's going to have a tough time staying outside, but he might be able to have that short area speed. But really, the big thing with him is the strength, the athleticism, and the football intelligence. He's going to be really good in any kind of coverage technique you want to put him in. And at Michigan State, he often shadowed the best receiver on the opposite side, so he does have that experience playing against top guys. Next guy I have, Paulson Adebo, like we already said. I won't touch on him a little too more. I kind of already said it. But again, he's going to be good in coverage, but you might have to deal with some of those ups and downs. And then my last guy, who I, in the past few months, have not been high on, but after rethinking a little bit, I'm going to talk about Shaun Wade a little bit out of Ohio State. This past year was not great. We all know that. He got beat tons of times against Indiana, against Ty Freifogel, I think for 2 touchdowns, a couple of them really bad. His 2020 tape was not great, but I think he's the kind of guy that if you take, you might be able to rework him into a safety role. I think for a team that takes him in the draft, it might be early day 3, 3rd or 4th round, maybe end of the 3rd round, but probably 4th round. I think if you take him, don't put him on the outside. We saw what happened this year in college. He's not going to be great out there, but he's the kind of guy that with his ball skills, with his athleticism and strength, he's a good tackler. You can put him at safety, and he can do some things for you. He can play across the middle. He can defend against the run, maybe even blitz a couple times. So if you're going to draft him, you got to make sure you're putting him in the right role, or else you're just going to set him up to fail.
Well, yeah, Shaun Wade, definitely a forgotten name. Somebody that had first round, grades around him coming into the season as well. Obviously dropped out with, inconsistent play. But going back to your guy Aaron Robinson, man, that I didn't realize how good of those DBs and UCF was. Man, they got corners and safeties everywhere. That's all over the draft. Are playing really well. So I think that's really cool to see that. But speaking of that, let's get right into our next list, which will be the top 5 small school cornerbacks. So schools like UCF or even smaller schools. Let's talk about some of those players. Ben, you were up. Let's hear your list with that.
So the first guy I got is Robert Rochelle out of Central Arkansas. Stands at about 6'2", 175, 180 pounds, but the guy is a freak athlete. He's got great size, great length, great explosiveness, and evaluators I've heard have been really excited about the numbers he's been testing with. He's typically a press man kind of guy, but he also has the skills and traits to play in coverages. His technique and transitions between routes and staying with receivers on double moves is a little bit spotty. But again, that's something that can be done with coaching, and he might be a guy that needs a little more polish. But he really attacks throws that are gone his way, and that could partially be because he's a former wideout. So quarterbacks have to definitely be careful around him because, like we talked about with Asante Samuel Jr. earlier, he might be the kind of guy that's going to bait you into making throws that you really shouldn't be making. And he's been rising up draft boards recently, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him go maybe in the 3rd round, potentially early 3rd round as one of those smaller school guys. Next guy I have on my list is Avery Williams out of Boise State. Smaller guy. He's only about 5'9", 5'10". He does have some decent weight. He's 195. But his skill set really favors him towards being a sub-package player. He has really good short area agility, and he's able to tackle too, so he's going to help you out in that run game. And one of the best things about him, and I always love this about players, is that he adds tremendous value in the special teams game. He played both in coverage units and as a returner, so if you're looking for some special teams help, Avery Williams might be your guy. The next guy I have on my list is Darren Hall out of San Diego State. Really great instincts, really good discipline, and really good route anticipation. And another thing is he's really dangerous with the ball in his hands if he's able to get it. And he did have some pretty good ball productivity in college. So if he gets an interception, he's going to be able to get you some more yards on the back end. And another thing, he's really tough, showed it on the field, and he's really high energy too. He's one of those high motor guys. He has decent kind of straight line speed, but he also has really good fluidity. So that's going to help him make out for some of the times when he's getting beat. He's going to be able to shift really easily, move with those quick cuts. And like I said, just a hard-nosed player. He's going to get it done. He's going to be a really good locker room guy, I think, as well. Fourth guy I have on my list is Shamar Jean Charles out of Appalachian State. And so he started the final 2 seasons at Appalachian State. But before that, like I was talking about earlier, with Avery Williams, he was just a special teams star, getting it done on coverage as a returner. But after he moved to starting corner role, he very quickly became one of the best players in that Appalachian State roster. He plays mostly on the outside, and he does have the productivity to show it. Over his last 2 seasons when he was a starter, he combined for 26 passes defended, only 2 interceptions, but those passes defended are a really good sign. He's a really physical guy out on the perimeter, but he does lack a little bit of length, so he might need to stay in kind of a nickel role. But I think he's a guy who could definitely turn into a really physical guy over the middle who's going to help you out there. And then the last guy I have is Brian Mills out of North Carolina Central. Long, tall, he's 6'1", only about 180 pounds. And he's the kind of guy who I think is going to be more of a potential prospect. We haven't seen too much of him out of North Carolina Central, so I think some of his skills, some NFL teams are going to have to draw out of him. But from what we have seen, he has really good ball skills, and he's going to be able to disrupt a lot of passing lanes. And his fundamentals and technique may need some time to develop and become more polished if he wants to be a press corner. And I think that's probably his best chance, but he's the kind of guy who has that raw talent that you're going to be able to draw out of him. He has decent speed. His long speed isn't great, but he has great he's really able to catch up. He's going to be able to, if he gets beat, he's going to be able to he has good short area quickness. He's going to be able to get back at those receivers. And I think he could be a really good cover guy too, whether it be cover 2, cover 3. But he's got a lot of natural skills. And like I said, a guy that's going to have to be polished, a guy that's going to need to develop a little bit, but maybe in a couple of years, be able to contribute on an NFL team.
Great list. I love your list. Brian Mills that you just spoke of, you got to see him at the Senior Bowl. He got beat up a little bit while he was down there, especially with the bigger receivers that was down there. But I think that, with him being at a smaller school, getting some better coaching, get more time with him, I think he'll do a phenomenal job. A guy that you talked about is Shamir Jean Charles, one of the guys that we interviewed. So if you haven't seen that interview, we have it right here on our YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, so subscribe, like on our YouTube so you can see all our interviews. We did have a video interview with him, so check that out on youtube.com. Search Inside the Hashes. But really good guy. He played on the opposite side of Sean Jolly. So obviously when you have that number 1 corner, the second guy usually get picked on, but they couldn't pick on him because he played very well and really kind of sharpened his skills as well. So I thought that was another guy. And spoiler alert, Avery Wilson, we actually interviewing him. We'll have that interview out sometime this week or next week. So he's another guy that we look really highly of. Ray, I want to hear your list right now of your top 5 sleeper corners.
5 small school, yeah. I have Aaron Robinson, number 1 from UCF. Obviously, we talked about him probably going like second round somewhere, so he's number 1. My second guy is Robert Boucher from Central Arkansas. Like Ben said, good football player, nice length. I only have him at 5'11", a little over 5'11", though.
I might have seen that wrong. That might have been my bad.
But again, a guy who's I think is going to be a good football player. What we're going to notice, like we keep saying, there's a lot of depth at cornerback this year. I mean, which is always nice, and like probably the reason why if there were some guys that could have come out last year probably should have, but didn't. So makes this year better anyway. So no problem. Shamir Jean Charles from Appalachian State, I have third. 5'10", 185, good football player. I think he'd be a really good special teamer for you right away if you're going to get him on the field. Number 4, I have Darren Hall from San Diego State. Again, a good, nice, solid athlete. 4.4 something speed, so not slow at all. Decent length. And at number 5, I have Mac McCain, North Carolina A&T. I think he's a zone guy. I don't think he's going to be a press type of a guy. I think he'd be better playing zone. And I like this cornerback class. I think they're really good. There's a lot of depth here. So
definitely, I can go on all day about this cornerback class because there's a couple of names you guys haven't even mentioned that I can talk about all day with. But yeah, this class is very deep, and I'm very excited to see where each one go. Because, like Ray said, we got corners of different types that whatever team of your liking might pick up, and they might be really good. And nowadays you need more cornerbacks with the slot position being so important now as well. With all these slot receivers, you're just seeing a really good slot receiver just retire in Jolie Edelman. So you need to get guys to stick guys like him in the NFL. And this year can tell you too, because there's so many slot receivers coming out as well. So you're gonna definitely need those cornerbacks. So this year with the wide receivers and the cornerbacks, it's gonna be a huge matchup right after the season, seeing all the slot corners and slot receivers going head to head. But with that being said, we're gonna get to my favorite portion of this segment, which is the best fit game. So if you guys haven't seen by now, with all like 8 episodes that we did already, this game is basically how I pick a team. These guys give that team the best fit player of that position. So this week, obviously, we're doing cornerbacks. So we're going to get right into it, and we're going to go with the Chicago Bears. Ray, give the Bears the best fit cornerback they can get.
You know what? I'm going to go. I'm not exactly sure. Like, I always like to try to make it see where will they take a corner, what pick they're going to take a corner. So I'm going to go with Sante Samuel. I think they like to play a lot of zone in the backfield. I think Sante Samuel is probably one of the better zone guys. I mean, of course, if you can take Patrick Surtain or Joe Horn early enough, you do it because they're going to be difference makers probably year one. But if I'm looking at a guy I may be able to get second, third round, I'm going to go with Sante Samuel.
Definitely. And they lost Kyle Fuller. I always get confused with him and his brother. Kyle Fuller, they had Kyle Fuller, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, they just lost Kyle Fuller. He went to the Broncos, I believe. So they definitely need a cornerback and a good cornerback that, like you said, be in that zone while having what's his name, the rusher from Buffalo,
Khalil Mack.
Khalil Mack. There you go. Having Khalil Mack come around that edge and having those zone corners with somebody that can jump those routes, that'd be great for them. That's a good fit, right? We're gonna go with Ben with this team. We're gonna give you the Bills.
With the Bills, I'm going to go with the guy I gave him in the mock draft, Aaron Robinson. He's the kind of guy who I think you could put on the opposite side of Tre'Davious White and just let him work as that number 2 corner and really, just bully guys on the outside and hopefully be able to stay with them. I think he's a really physical guy and they like to play that kind of style in Buffalo, so I think he'd fit really well there.
Definitely, and I believe they still have Josh Norman, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but he's getting up there in age. So Robinson, we talked about it a little earlier. He could be a little bit of a developmental project. So Norman's the kind of guy who could learn really well from too.
Exactly, and I think that would be great because Norman came from Coastal Carolina, small school guy. Nobody knew about him. He came up the ranks from learning technique the right way. He wasn't the fastest guy, so given Robinson those pointers of how to be a corner, I think that would make him a great corner. And Tre'Davious White, let's not forget about him. That was one of my favorite corners in that year's draft. Nobody believed me, and the guy's playing out of his mind. So let's get to our next team. Ray, you got the Arizona Cardinals. They just lost Patrick Peterson. Who are you gonna help replace him with?
Well, you know what? I'm going to go Caleb Farley. I think that if they're going to take a guy, they could take him a little bit later. And we've talked about the back issues, but if there were no back issues, this guy's easily a first-round talent. So, and you probably get taken first round anyway, probably towards the end of the first round where he probably would have been like anywhere from 10 to 25. Maybe he goes 25 to 30. But I think this is really good. I have 35 corners as draftable players. That's a lot of numbers, man. It really is.
Yeah. It's going to be teams taking like 2 of them, maybe even 3 sometimes. So definitely. Let's get to our next comment. Johnny Dean, what did I miss? You missed a whole bunch of cornerbacks, man. So, if you want to go check this out, go check it out on our YouTube channel. Go subscribe on our YouTube channel. You can watch the whole thing all over again. Hear what we talked about, these top corners. Again, these are a very deep draft. So if you're into cornerbacks like I am, check it out. As soon as this live stream is over, listen to some of the smaller school guys that might be on your favorite team, which is the Buccaneers, I believe. So we'll see. But let's go to our next team. Ben, I'm giving you the Indianapolis Colts. They have Rocky Sin, who's a solid cornerback, but he might be better as a number 2. Maybe they might need a number 1 guy. Who you gonna give the Colts?
So, and I would like to give the Colts J.C. Horn, but he's not going to be there by the time they're picking in the first round, and I don't think they're going to be the kind of team that's going to trade up for him. So I think the guy that they could target in the second round is Kelvin Joseph out of Kentucky. He has the kind of potential to be a number 1 in the future, and what's something nice too is they might be able to save a little money on his signing bonus too. But I think he can fit really well in the Colts system and give them a nice new piece to fit in their secondary.
Definitely. Johnny Dean said, J.C. Horn been mentioned yet? Been mentioned a lot of times, my man. A lot of times. Definitely check that out, my man. Thank you. Appreciate that. So, Ray, we're going to give you the Cardinals. And speaking of J.C. Horn, maybe he might slip there. Maybe.
I don't think that either one of the first 2 guys will get past 15. I don't. Yeah. I think that but if I go Cardinals, I'm going to go Elijah Molden. Again, I think they're more of a zone coverage type of a team, and I don't think they're going to take a corner in the first round. I think that they're going to need to add a wide receiver to that roster. They're going to need some offensive and defensive linemen. So I'm going to give them somebody I think they get a little bit later. Maybe a Paulson Adebo from Stanford if you're going to go a little later, because that's a guy who can play some zone, can play some press, some man. I think he's a good football player. And again, if you need a corner this year, you're in good shape, man. Just let one fall to you and pick them.
Definitely. Yeah, and they lost Casey Hayward, very, very intellective corner. Like, the guy was very smart, and he had problems catching the ball, but if he caught those balls, the dude be like having like 8 interceptions a year or something like that. So the guy was really good. So they definitely need a replacement there. Ben, I'm gonna hand it to you. You're gonna be handling my favorite team, the Eagles. We definitely need a corner. Opposite of Darius Slade. We seen what happened last year where they was picking on whoever wasn't on in Darius Slade's spot. It was a revolving door in that position. Darius Slade's getting up there in age, so eventually we need that guy to slide over to number 1. Who are you going to give my Eagles?
So I know a lot of you. So I go to Temple University here in Philadelphia, so I'm constantly surrounded by Eagles fans, hearing all the chatter, and I know a lot of them really want a receiver in the first round. But if J.C. Horn or Surtain is there, I think you got to pick him up. I think Horn's the more likely guy. Having him across from Darius Slay, being that more physical guy on the outside, I think that'd be really nice. But if they do decide to go with a receiver in the first round, I think someone that could help him out in the second round, maybe early there, is Ifeatu Melifonwu out of Syracuse. Again, that physical guy that's going to be able to battle for you, help you out on your run defense. Just someone who's going to be a really good culture fit in the secondary for the Eagles.
I do like that mindset because Darius Slay, while he can be physical, he's a smaller cornerback. He relies a little bit more on speed and intellect. Having that more physical guy on the opposite end will probably help. You've seen what DK Metcalf did to him last year, Darius Slay. So
Right.
I think that will help. That will definitely help. Ray, you're in charge of getting my rival now, the New York Giants, a cornerback. Who will you be giving up?
I'm going to go Kelvin Joseph from Kentucky, another long-range corner, a guy who will probably be there in the second or maybe even the third round. The Giants need a lot of players. I know they added some players in free agency. I don't necessarily think they need a lot of skill players. I think they could use another wide receiver, but they have needs, a lot of needs. But they did sign the wide receiver from Detroit, so they're probably not going to go there. So maybe in the second or third round you go corner and you take away Kelvin Joseph or Irv Stokes from Georgia, one of them guys. So
nice. Let's stay in the NFC East. You got the Cowboys going up next. They definitely need a cornerback. They had the rookie corner Trevon Diggs. Yeah. They had him. He had up and down season. Let's get them another weapon on the outside to defend some of these wide receivers. Ben, who you getting the Cowboys?
Yeah, I mean, the Cowboys just need really anybody in their secondary. I mean, if you look down the bottom of their list at maybe they're like third, fourth, fifth corner guys, I mean, it kind of seems like Madden generated players. They don't really have anyone down there. So I think first round, they got to take one of those top two guys if they're there. If they have their choice, I think they should go with Surtain. He's the kind of guy that I think is going to give you a lot of similar things that Byron Jones that they let go recently that was going to give you, but I think he's better. He's the kind of guy that's going to be able to get out there, just take down that number one receiver. But a guy that we talked about earlier too, who I think could fit with them, is Shaun Wade, and someone who's just going to be able to move around the secondary and just be a little versatile. But really, they just need bodies. I think they got to pick up a few guys in the secondary in this draft.
Man, I would hate to see Surtain on that defense, especially with him and his counterpart, Diggs. They already played together. I would hate that, but it's nothing I can do about it. All right, let's go to our next picks. The Green Bay Packers. They got a great cornerback and Zaire Alexander. Really good cornerback. Ray, they need somebody on the opposite end of him. I think Kevin King, I think he re-signed if I'm not mistaken, but you might need somebody to replace him too. So, Ray, who you giving the Packers?
You know what? I'm going to go maybe Sante Samuel again. Somebody who can play a little off corner, do a good job for you there. I mean, I don't know what Green Bay does. I don't like their front that much. It's solid, but it's nothing special. So you want to have somebody who can bait them into thinking a guy's open and then go make your move to get the ball. And they need to get the ball back to Aaron Rodgers unless they start drafting some more offensive players for us. So.
Definitely. Teams are starting to throw away from Alexander, so definitely need somebody on that end. Then you're next. You got the Carolina Panthers. They've been looking for a corner for a while now. Give them a guy to finally help them stabilize that position.
I think Eric Stokes could be a pretty decent fit in Carolina. I mean, we saw in college, we saw the 40 time he put up, but as we know with this draft cycle, these 40 times you can never really take them for sure. But we saw in the film from last year, he was staying with guys like Anthony Schwartz, who was deemed, the fastest man in college football. And I think he's a guy who's going to help him on the outside and just really be a speedy guy who's going to be able to stay with those really tough, and now especially really tough NFC South receiver groups on these other teams. He's a guy that's going to help you, like I said, with his speed. The run game he could help a little bit with. That whole defense really needs a little bit of an overhaul, but I like Stokes in Carolina. I think he's a good scheme fit, and that speed is really something that they can covet down there.
Definitely. Johnny said that Green Bay overworks their secondary. They need to build up front. Like Ray said, I do agree with that. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I love the corner that Ben just said. That kid has run a 4.31 at his pro day. Man, he could fly. So
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. All right, let's do a couple more. Ray, you got the Detroit Lions. Obviously, they picked up what's his name from last year? I forget his name. Okudah. Yes, Jeff Okudah. They got Jeff Okudah from last year. He kind of struggled last year. They might need another cornerback anyway for the opposite side. Right, who are you going to give them right there?
I'm going to go Greg Newsome. I think a guy who had a nice solid 40 time, good speed, can play a little man, can do some things for you on the back end and zone. I just think that Greg Newsome, again, I think he's an underrated football player. I think he could be a first-round talent when it's all said and done.
Yeah, wow. That would be a crazy pairing, I think, putting those two guys together.
Yeah.
And you got a couple of guys. And then we're going to end off with this last one. We got the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, they got Marcus Lattimore on one end. I think he was in some legal trouble, so he might be suspended first couple of games. I'm not sure how that went. But either way, they need somebody opposite of him. Who are you going to give the Saints?
I think a guy like Tyson Campbell could fit decently well with the Saints. He's someone who obviously he doesn't have the kind of speed that Eric Stokes does, but I think he's much more technically sound. And in that Saints secondary, especially if that front seven is still a little bit shaky, you're going to need someone who's going to be able to stay with receivers, who's going to be able to cover all different kinds of routes, play different kind of coverages. I think Campbell can provide that for you. And he's also really battle tested in the SEC. And like I was talking about with Stokes and the Panthers, you're going to need a guy who has experience going up against those receivers in the NFC South. I think Campbell can be that guy for you if you're the Saints.
Definitely. Man, I can't wait. I just cannot wait till this draft comes and we see where these guys go and get to see, how they play out during the off season and, see how they go through the season. I am super excited about this. If you guys not excited, I don't know what's going on with you guys. We got 2 more weeks to the draft. Tomorrow will be exactly 2 weeks. So that's just exciting. Guys, we would like to thank you guys for coming in here as always. But in 2 weeks, we will have a mock draft. So that'll be the night before the actual draft. We'll have another mock draft for you guys, mock draft 3.0 for you guys. It's going to be insane. It's going to tie into a lot of rumors because a lot of rumors come into the day or the week of the draft. So we're going to be tying in those rumors into our mock drafts, and we're going to see some shakeups, see some guys maybe slip in. Like last week's, we had Aaron Robinson that we just mentioned earlier. He snuck up in the first round. We might have a couple of those, so make sure you check us out. Next week, we're going to be doing the safeties to wrap up our positional series as well. So make sure you come back next week, next Wednesday at 7:00 as well, and all that. So any parting words from you guys before we end?
I think that, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, that this year's corner class and this year's wide receiver class, in terms of number of guys taken and where they're taken, it's going to be really similar. I've already said it earlier. I think it's the same thing with the receivers too. Once a couple of these guys start to get taken, 2nd round, 3rd round, 4th round, I think you're going to start seeing teams move up to get guys that they really like because they're not going to have the chance because they're going to start going. So I really wouldn't be surprised if with both corners and receivers, we see somewhere from like 12 to 15 guys get taken in the first 4 rounds. I think that it's going to be a really deep class, but because it's a deep class, these guys are going to start to go pretty early, and these teams are going to want to move up to get their guys that fit their schemes, fit the personalities that they like, have the skills that they want. So I wouldn't be surprised if corners and wide receivers are a very heavy thing late day 2, early day 3.
Definitely. What do you think, Ray?
I love what Ben just said. I think you're going to see a lot of these guys go 2nd, 3rd round between the corners and the wide receivers. There's a lot of depth there. But you're going to see teams where they don't want to wait till day 3 because they want to get their guy. So I think the 3rd round, you're going to see a lot of corners. You're going to see a lot of wide receivers go because there is a lot of depth. But you're going to see some teams will I don't want to wait till tomorrow. I'm going to go get my guy. I think you're going to have in this draft, and Jerome, for a guy in his like almost late 50s now, I get as excited for the draft as I did 30 years ago. It's just, especially now with the coverage. I mean, I remember when if you covered the draft or you followed it when I was younger, you would listen to it on AM radio, and hopefully you got the channel. But I just love the coverage of it. I love the whole thing. I'm hoping that they get to do a little bit more than they did last year, because last year was, even though I didn't mind it, it wasn't quite as exciting as it is when the fans are more involved. Kind of like football. When the fans are involved, it's just more exciting to watch. There's more things to watch. And not that I want to say anything else. If the 49ers take Mac Jones at the 3rd pick, they get exactly what they deserve, okay?
Definitely. Speaking of that, Johnny Dean said, I wouldn't be shocked if Mills get drafted over Fields. If you're talking about the quarterbacks, that's a very hot take. That's a very hot take. That's a very hot take.
I don't want to criticize anybody. That's not a smart take, though. Okay. Davis Mills, yeah. I like, Jerome knows, I like Davis Mills.
He does.
But he's not going to get taken before round 3. He's not.
Yeah, I was actually hoping the Eagles might be like looking at him, and we got 2 third-round picks. Like, hey, let's get this quarterback here and see how he does behind Jalen Hurts. I think that would be a great pickup for the Eagles in the 3rd round. But man, to say he's going to get picked before Fields, I mean, I'm excited to see what Tua does this year. I had Miami in one mock draft take Davis Mills in the beginning of the 4th round because he was still there, and to me, if you get Davis Mills in the 4th round, you can't pass up that value. You can't, because I liked him.
I think he's going to develop into a nice, solid starter. But I can't take him before you take something. You can't.
Yeah, two little film tape, two little games. I think he only started 16, 14 games, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, but you know what though, Jerome? You're talking about like 2 or 3. I mean, you have the quarterback from North Dakota State. He only started 14 games. Justin Fields only started a season and a half, really. When you think
Mac Jones only got about 14
Mac Jones,
games.
the king of check down, played 14 games. I mean, but
That's
I mean, you could say, yeah, but he played at a high level, and he did. He played against the best competition in college football, and he was great during the playoffs, and he was, won a national title. But when you talk about, and I hate the whole thing of, well, if your quarterback wins, you can take him, he's a winner. No, quarterbacks win when they're surrounded by a lot of talent. Okay, so
I agree with that too. He says that Mills is a third runner, but some teams are really looking hard into him.
I agree with that.
I disagree with that, though.
I agree with it.
He's not better than Justin Fields, though. I don't think
he's not. He doesn't have more upside. I mean, I think Justin Fields is in a perfect spot now, though, because someone's going to get him a little later than they should, and if he's and it all comes down to this: if the right team takes the right quarterback, they will be fine. And if you have somebody who reaches to take a Mills or one of them guys, and they're going to be like, probably shouldn't have done that. You're putting a lot of pressure on a guy who maybe isn't quite ready for it yet. Honestly, I think except for Trevor Lawrence, every one of the quarterbacks that are drafted after him should sit for at least one season. I do.
Definitely. I mean, it's the league that we're in now, though. They're going to get pushed in early. Some guys might, get sat for most of the season and play a couple of games at the end. Some teams might be like, all right, week 4, you're in, some kind of thing. So we'll see. It all depends what quarterback goes to what team, what situations happen.
The one thing I don't like hearing is I hear a lot of, he's a one read quarterback. 80% of the college quarterbacks that are taken this year are one read quarterbacks.
I agree with that.
So I mean, so why are you knocking this guy or that guy? I like Justin Fields. Do I think he should be taken before the middle of the first round? No, I don't. But I think he's going to be because quarterbacks are drafted early.
I could definitely see Fields as the kind of guy where, say he's still on the board at 11 with the Giants pick. I could definitely see a team like New England or Washington trading up and just taking him because he's there. I think if he does fall past that, that number 4 number, those 5 to 10 spots, probably not looking for a quarterback unless the Panthers decide that they want to go after one. I think he's a guy that can definitely be a product of a trade and go into a team that really, really likes him and will find a way to use him.
If Justin Fields is lucky enough to go to New England, that would be a perfect spot for him. Because even if he's ready, they'll just let him sit and kind of play behind Cam Newton. And this way Cam can show him not what to do.
Right. You're going to tell me that enough, Ray.
What's that?
You don't got to say that more to me, Ray. I know.
I respect Cam Newton. He was a really good football player. And I think he'll probably play a little better this year than he did last year. Had to knock off a lot of rust, he did. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't have the arm strength that he used to have. And he's not as good an athlete as he used to be. So he's not the same player. I mean, his athleticism made him stand out. So, I mean, if you lose that, then you've lost, what you were. And again, I don't like New England, of course, but I do respect them. I respect their team. I think that Bill Belichick is one of the top 2 or 3 coaches ever to coach in the pro football. But I think that he'll let him sit until he's ready to play. I mean, he's not going to rush him on the field, and that is exactly what Justin Fields needs. So,
right.
Great stat by Johnny Dean. 27 quarterbacks were drafted in the first round between 2000 and I'm guessing 2000 and 2018. Yeah, 2018, 5 are still with their drafted teams. That's a very good stat. And with that being said, I think there's a possibility that we're going to have 5 straight quarterbacks in this draft with, the top 3 guys, obviously, and then there might be 2 trades in there. If depending on what Atlanta might think, because they might want a quarterback too.
They might take one too.
Exactly. So that's going to be crazy. We'll definitely see how that goes. But thank you guys for checking us out this week. We'd like to thank Johnny Dean for being in the chat room. We thank Chris. We thank our guy Remy for all being in the chat room, and all you guys that are watching either later on or on YouTube. You can definitely check us out live every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. Like I said, next week we'll be doing safeties. The week after that, we'll be doing our final mock draft, right, the night before the draft. So definitely check us out. If you're not on YouTube already, please go in there and subscribe and like and comment on there. Even if after the live feed, definitely come on and comment on it. We'll definitely come back and answer any questions that you may have. So check that out. Search InsideTheHashes.com. Also check out our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts, where you can listen to a lot of player interviews that we interview, a lot of these DBs that we talked about today that we already interviewed. So definitely check that out, InsideTheHashes.com or Inside the Hashes in that search bar for on all your podcasts. Special podcasts that you like to do, definitely check that out on there. And also check out our social media on Inside the Hashes on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Guys, we'd like to thank y'all so much for coming in here. We are super excited about this draft coming up, man. I'm super excited about it. I don't know about you guys, but it's coming, man. It's almost here. I can just
right there.
Smell it. I can smell it. So it's coming up really fast, man. Super excited to see where people are going. We'll definitely have our discussions as the week progresses, and as the draft goes on as well. So thank you guys once again. I'm your humble host, Jerome Jones. We got Ben Swartz right here. We got my man Ray right down there. Thank you guys so much for checking us out, and we see you next week. Peace.